Hi, Chris.
Pull the ripcord on this motherfucker. You ready?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So let's let everybody know what we're doing. It's kind of a first for the both of us, and it's a big dick move, like big dick energy kind of deal. So Chris, speaking of dicks, speaking of big dicks, let everybody know what's going on.
All right. I had this notion today that we would spend time channeling George Floyd and the essence or the spirit of Derek Chauvin. And this is just one example of a polarizing event in a litany of Black folks being murdered and mistreated by white folks, period, particularly by police officers. And even again in North Carolina yesterday or the day before, the 42-year-old father who was shot cold-blooded in his car, right? And that's just, I'm fucking over it. And I'm reminded of the quote of like, what good is my own enlightenment? The people around me aren't enlightened. But it had me thinking a lot about spirituality and the work that we do on ourselves and with others. And what good is my own spirituality, of and by the human spirit? I mean, nothing more or less than that. If we don't actually apply it and use it as a way to help ourselves and to help the world in which we move around in better understand ourselves and our roles in it. And so when you reached out to me today and had asked how I was doing or whatever it was, and I was like, let's just get really weird and go for this. My hope is that by the end of this experiment, that we both learn a little bit about each other. I want to put a big fat asterisk on the front end of this, and that the opinions that are expressed are not that of George Floyd and his estate and his family, nor do I pretend to represent Derek Chauvin or to sympathize with him or to speak for him or anything like that, right? Think of it as a work of historical fiction. And if we are able to elicit some interesting exercises, challenge our own thinking or challenge the thinking of those that might happen to view or listen to this, then it was a good use of our time. So I've volunteered to play the role of Derek Chauvin, and you are going to channel the spirit of George Floyd.
Yes, well said on the introduction, because I do want to reiterate that the channeling that I am doing and the role that I am playing in this by no means is the be all end all. It is a means to communicate and to open conversations and to plant seeds and to help put into the greater good, the whole interwoven net of the greater good, put into that something that could do something good, like provoke thoughtfulness and things like that. So yeah, well said. And thank you for that. So yes, I am channeling George Floyd, and Derek Chauvin is still alive. So that's interesting, whatever you're doing on your end. But I think we should just go ahead and get started, because as soon as I introduced myself to George Floyd and got in my own routine, he showed up right away, and very enthusiastic to speak at this moment, and very enthusiastic to react to things that have been happening.
Great. No, that's fantastic. And why don't we just turn it over? I was going to make note of a couple of things here that are coming through big and strong. So I'm going to go on mute.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go ahead and ask him what he wishes to communicate, what he wants to start with. Well, first of all, I would like to say that his energy was in my face in a very non-threatening way. He was very like, "Oh, I'm here," as soon as I was thinking about him. So, and he's just kind of just sitting around like I've been waiting to speak on this. And thank you very much, ma'am. He is very respectful to me for doing this. I appreciate that you're going to hear me out. So let me check in and see what he wants to say.
Okay.
I knew when I passed right away that I did not die in vain, except that nobody else knew that yet because everything was still playing out. You know, what I left behind, the whole story of it, the incident, and then the effects that happened because of this. I am most proud that that happened to me, the whole experience, the whole situation of it has put a magnifying glass on similar situations all across the board, he says. I feel that now that everything has been put under a magnifying glass, I feel as if there will be a little bit more bleeding before the healing. As for me, I'm fine. I'm doing fine because I have passed and I am very content with being on the other side. But I am watching and I did attend the court. I was there sitting with my family because, first and foremost, my concern is about them and not so much as the justice or injustice of it all. These are souls that I'm connected to. I will continue to be connected to them as they move on. They have the hardest job, in my opinion. I did attend, and I would like to say he's sending me a lot of mixed emotions right now, actually. A lot of mixed emotions. As kind of like to communicate his feeling. He's saying this is a tragedy all the way around. It's a tragedy, of course, for African Americans. It's a tragedy for my family, which is what I'm most concerned about. It's a tragedy for me. I lost my life. But it's also a tragedy for society. Not that this was a new thing that happened, but that there was a camera present, that there were people standing around, and that this was day. And the tragedy is of the people around that saw it as well. And the tragedy is the actual police officers that were doing what they were doing. It's all really one big tragedy. He is not extending any sympathy towards the police officers, but he's not extending any hatred. Does not wish to communicate any hatred, and he's not extending any he's kind of he doesn't have hate in his heart for it. He doesn't, but he's kind of neutral in a way to it. It's almost like not guarded, but it's now kind of in other hands, and he's kind of watching as a spectator, because now it's not up to him to what happens. It has everything to do with what is happening down here. So he does have a reaction, but I'm going to tell him to hold up, because I feel like somebody's saying, let Chris say something real quick. So go ahead.
Does he want to talk to Derek?
Not at this time of the podcast. Maybe a little later. I'll ask him again, but not at this time.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's kind of waiting to see what you say.
Yeah. The tragedy to me, and what I love about what you shared, is all of it. And when we fail to remember our true nature and who we are, and I'm speaking from a soul level truth, not in the human persona, and we cause and act upon and go through this needless suffering, which is a disconnect, and then impose our own self-loathing upon other people. My impression of Derek Chauvin is that the aspects that he recognized of himself that he didn't like is what he took out on others. He didn't have a privileged upbringing. His parents were divorced. Dad was an accountant. Mom, was like a teacher or something like that. Didn't finish high school, got his GED, went into the reserves for 10 years. It's like classic middle America, right? I know people like this. I know police officers like this, that get frustrated with their own lot in life and then take it out on the folks that they interact with. It doesn't make it right, but I would like to focus on some of his suffering as well, because goddamn, it's a thin line between where he is and where I am. A couple of off decisions, a couple of bad days. And I'm not saying that what he did to not just George Floyd, but a couple of other folks that he murdered or at least killed is justified. But not to be lost in all this is the suffering that we as a species go through. And I don't sympathize with police officers. I can't get the statement out of my head to protect and serve, period. They're on our payroll. We pay the taxes. They work for us. End of story. And then to think that we're paying the salary for folks, not all, some, probably, hopefully a minority, that have their own disconnect from their true nature and then go out into the world and use that badge and baton to act out and to lash out. It's unacceptable. It is absolutely unacceptable to protect and serve. You mix up the gun with what was that, like a flare gun? I mean, come on.
I don't know. Yeah, I know. Really.
Come on. No way.
Even kids' toys have a red tip on them now,
Right. I just don't buy it. Right. So when I think through what I'm aware of, and as the father of two mixed race young men and my grandchildren, where I'm stuck, frankly, Christina, is on this aspect of spirituality that I mentioned on the front end with activism. So what good is my own spirituality if I'm not doing something with it? If I'm not using it to act as an agent of change and of growth and of evolution for the species. So that's where I, Chris, am sitting. Now, when I went in and I'm just sitting with Derek's energy, it was actually light. He has around him, from an energetic perspective, a lot of support. It's as if he volunteered for this coming into this lifetime, knowing that this would be an impetus for change. So what I'd like to get from your perspective, if George is able to just take a step out of being George Floyd and more into his higher self, I would like to talk about the bigger picture. Why is it that he would have volunteered at the soul level to come into this lifetime, to live the life that George did, knowing that this is a distinct possibility, not a certainty, because it's all possibilities and probabilities. But why would he have signed up for this? Because I'm seeing Derek surrounded by a lot of like energy and support and love, because he's suffering where he sits today, clearly. And the support that he's getting is not at the human level, right? Not the support that it's almost like he's just now surrounded in like this huge pillow of just love and light. And it reminds me of how I would suspect someone who martyred would be supported then as they transitioned or moved on. Like, it's exhausting, it's hard, and there's just a lot of support for him right now at the energetic level. So there was a question in the middle of that, sorry.
Yeah, no, I got it. And yes, while you were speaking, I did get a couple of notes from George. And one of them was when you were speaking about kind of soul level truth and things like that. He did say, yes, I'm still playing a big role in the human side. So that's why I'm still kind of very much involved, especially with the other souls. So it's almost like he's transitioned to be guidance for family, for like principally, he says. So therefore, he does have an interest in this world still. So we're going to take it to the higher self. Give me just a minute.
Yeah, that makes sense.
On a soul level, he doesn't know the result of this. That's very interesting. He doesn't know the results because you sign up to play the role, but you don't necessarily sign up for the end result. Yes. He played a lot of roles. Speaking of roles, while he was on Earth, I don't know much about his life. Christina does not know much about his life personally. But he's like, I'm going to tell you. He was consistently a little inconsistent in his life. There was a reason for that in his community where he came from. It's almost like he was every man. So yes, I mean, he has people who loved him and things like that, but on a soul level, he was every man. There were times in his life where he was on top, and there was times in his life where he was on the bottom. Not too, the standard deviation was not too, too far from the average, of course. But when he was up, he was up. He was down, he was down. And yeah, on a soul level, the higher self, absolutely, he did sign up for this. And not just this, he's bringing forward, this is so interesting, he's bringing forward so many other souls for the last 150, 200 years with him. And it's all connected. And they all played a role, and it is mostly, and I'm talking about specifically African Americans. civil rights people, during the 60s. And then also at the very beginning when they started to being brought over to the United States, which was 1400, 1500, 1600s, things like that. So I'm seeing it's all very connected. And I'm seeing souls. I'm not seeing who they are per se, because that's actually not important. The important thing that I'm being shown is that it's all very connected. So the shift that is happening now, whatever is happening now, was going to happen 100 years ago today, like it was all coming to this. Because now I'm asking, I'm like, well, when you look at Earth as the playing ground, the ground level, there are so many micro, let's call them games, okay? Micro games happening. Little communities out in the middle of the jungles, out in the desert, out in Asia, in Australia, in the outback of Australia. There are all these things happening, but then there are these these big games happening at the same time. And this is one of the games that's been happening for centuries.
Yeah.
And what needs to happen within this particular area, has been happening for quite some time. I'm sorry I'm being so obscure here, but it is a little bit like I'm not getting words now. I'm just getting images and feelings. So I'm trying my best to communicate exactly with the gusto that I'm feeling and how interesting and interwoven this all is. I mean, it's all just all these people. It's almost like I'm being shown sticks of dynamite, right? Mm-hmm. In a cave. So there's this big mountain, right? You gotta get through the mountain. And you can't just have a stick of dynamite and expect the mountain to start to cave in for you to go in. It takes little sticks here and here, and also strategically placed dynamite, and also dynamite that's bigger than most dynamite, or little bitty sticks of dynamite, almost like firecrackers. So that's what I'm being shown is how it kind of all works. It's like the dynamite of George Floyd. He signed up to be that stick of dynamite, and it was placed in a strategic place in this tunnel, and it detonated. Now, when the rubble and the dust settle, that's something he won't know what happens. All he knows is it's going deeper and deeper. Yep. towards the direction. And other sticks of dynamite, before it even settles, are going off at the same time. So, and afterwards, that's further going to push it through. So did that answer your question?
It does, right? So, and now we're getting to where I want to get, which is, what's the point of it all? And when I saw Derek surrounded by love and light, it's because of, and this is not something I would expect for him consciously to be aware of or to recognize as him, but I'm thinking just, in terms of the energy and the agreements, is like, wow, like this is hard, it's exhausting, it sucks, but I did it, right? Like I played my role in instigating change and of lighting that dynamite so we can break down this mountain even further. But he's one of an infinite amount of people that have either been the provocateur, right, or the perpetrator or the victim. And oftentimes, in my experience, Christina, doing this type of work, we play both roles, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes in one lifetime, sometimes in another. And as I'm seeing his energy, I see a darker skinned man with white hair, like an elder, right? And so typically when people sign up for this sort of role, they go into it because they've achieved a certain amount of awareness, and they know that that's what this is. When you look at Derek's history, right, from not finishing high school all the way through having a very similar situation with a 14-year-old kid in Minnesota where he put the knee on his back and he couldn't breathe. It's almost like he was practicing for this. And that's just absolutely disgusting. And yet, the point of it all is to get to a place where we recognize who we really are. And I don't know that I have the answer to who we are, but I have an awful lot of opinions and experience on who we're not, right? And I know that when I go through, okay, this isn't me, that it then allows me to get a little bit closer to the truth of it all for myself. And maybe I'll get there, maybe I won't, maybe another lifetime, who knows? But the more time I spend asking myself these sorts of questions, the better and richer and more fulfilling my life becomes, and then subsequently that of the lives of the folks that are around me. So if I'm a disaffected white person who sees the world becoming multiple shades of not white, and I'm working low-level jobs, and I'm in this confirmation bias news cycle where it feels like every person that crosses the border or that doesn't look like me or watch One America is a threat to my existence. Goddamn right it is, right? And it should be. Conversely, if I'm an African-American man, or better yet, if I'm Maxine Waters and she's like, yeah, there better be a conviction, right? And then the right-wing news media goes off on a tangent, like, who is she? She's Maxine Waters. I met her at LAX. She's all of like 5'4" and 90 pounds. But wow, what a powerful voice she is. And that doesn't mean that everything that comes out of her mouth is something that you're going to agree with. But unless you've actually gone through it and suffered and have walked down the street, have had people stare at you, call you names, spit on you, mistreat you, whatever it might be, who the fuck are we to challenge what someone else's opinion is about this? We don't have the right. So yay to Maxine Waters. I don't necessarily agree with her politics, but with her as a human being who stands up as a voice for the disaffected, absolutely. As a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy that never finished college and just keeps figuring out ways to make money, which is incredible, and I get that I'm privileged. And if you were to look at me and not know my story, you'd think I've had it pretty easy. I made it very difficult on myself. So I relate to a lot of this. I want to make sure that as Chris, and having this pulpit, if you will, or this opportunity to bring people together, that I do that. And the best way to do that is to understand that we basically all have the same concerns. And that's my work for sure. And I'll continue to step into that further and further. But if we can just put ourselves in the shoes of these other folks and to not watch the news cycle and form opinions, but to read a little bit about their upbringing, read a little bit about what they went through, and look for similar situations in our own experience where we can find something to relate to. It doesn't mean you have to agree with that person or that person's perspective, but at least to humanize it a little bit and understand that George Floyd did some dumb things. He probably did the best that he could, made the best decisions he could at the time because that's all that was available to him. The same is true for Derek. Right? And by all means, I don't justify what he did, but he is a human being. He did suffer. He's caused suffering. He's going to have a lot of time to think about it if he's lucky. He may not be as lucky. It may not last very long in prison. But I do think that's kind of what he signed up for. So from a soul level, good on him for causing more conversations around this and to get this divide to grow to the point where it cracks, because I do know that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I just believe that in my heart of hearts, that there'll be more blood, more pain, more suffering. But the quicker we move through it, the quicker we get through to the other side and a little bit of salvation and grace.
Right. So as you were speaking, I've got a lot of notes. I'm not particularly certain if it was George or if it were one of my guides, but very wise. The first one is actually this is George. He just said, "Okay, I told you this." So he wants to focus on the everyman. You know, the situation around his death. First of all, there was like, there's a reason that it happened the way it did with him being everyman, because he didn't have any kind of like really high accolades about him. He wasn't like a lawyer or a doctor or anything like that. And he's like, so that means it shouldn't matter. He did have some what were the, because I can't recall the situation of his arrest. Hold on, I'll ask him.
Yeah, he was there for it.
Yeah. So yeah, he wasn't the most he says he wasn't the most obliging person to order around. He didn't really necessarily like cops, he says. Which, that's the role he was playing. And he says, yeah, I mean, I didn't make it pleasant, and I instigated the situation. It wasn't I was just walking around down the street. It happened because of what he did and what I did and what they did and things like that. So he's taking that kind of responsibility. Not to say that he should be blamed or anybody else should be blamed or not blamed. That's what happened. And the fact that he was every man, he wasn't perfect, and he didn't have anything too spectacular about him. That was why it is so important, because if you put in any other character, like a lawyer, like a black lawyer, the story changes. If you put in someone who didn't resist arrest or didn't talk back or didn't give the cop a hard time or whatever the situation is, that changes the story.
Right.
But what he did was not like at all like threatening or bad per se. It was just like it was like, I don't want to say resistance, because he wasn't really resisting. It was more of a back talk, just not just rolling over and putting your hands behind your back kind of deal, right? He wants to emphasize that. So that's why it's important, because you can plug in anybody in the country, because we've all made mistakes. We could put you in there, he said, Chris, a white male, and you're going to the store to buy something, and then you get sassy with the police officers.
It's happened.
Yeah. And you're still here. But like that shouldn't change the story, That shouldn't change the story. The story is everyone should be treated the same. It doesn't matter. There should be a protocol. There should be emotion taken out of a police officer's job. There should be a protocol, because there's, there, like, would you have died if you were in that situation? The answer is no, Chris. You would not have had a knee on your neck for 9 minutes. That's the truth of it.
Yeah.
And same with me. Absolutely not. I would not be dead. And well, let's put someone else in there, he says. We'll put someone else. I don't know. Let's put in, let's say, a career accomplished African American. I don't know. Let's give me somebody.
Barack Obama.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, That's too good, actually. But yeah, if it were Barack Obama, no, he would not. He would still be here.
Yeah.
It shouldn't matter what his job is.
What if it were like Dante Culpepper?
I'm sorry, who is that?
He was a black quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, okay. Sports guy. Sorry, I'm not up on my sports people.
It's a question for George, not for you.
If it were him,
Yeah.
it'd be the same. Well, and this is something that just popped in my mind.
Mhm.
Do you remember? And I do know this sports person because I was actually in Nashville when this happened. What was the quarterback that got shot by his girlfriend? The Tennessee Titan one. Steve McNair.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay. So Steve McNair got shot by his girlfriend and then she killed herself. Okay. Here's what happened. A couple days before, I think he was drunk driving, and correct me if I'm wrong, he was drunk driving. No, she was driving. Anyway, the details of this are fuzzy, but whatever it was, they let him walk away and she took the fall for it. And that's what kind of started all of it.
Wow.
Okay. Now, he is African American, she's white. He's African American, but he is a quarterback for the Tennessee Titans in Nashville, and they let him off. They let him walk away, right? So would Steve McNair be dead if he were in the same situation as George Floyd? No, because he's somehow more esteemed because of his job.
Yeah.
That's the point I'm trying to make here. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on about it, but it's actually George that's making me kind of like go back and forth about like examples.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like this is why he was just kind of almost an everyman guy, you know. Okay, and then I was told, not by George, but kind of by my people, that this is generational and gestational. And what's happening is a lot of discomfort of this old way of thinking. And that's why you have these people, these white people coming out super angry and snippy and all lives matter and all that. The discomfort is evidence that things are churning. Absolutely. And it may not be in their lifetime that they change.
Absolutely.
It's going to go gestational, they said. It's going to go to the next generation of whatever they produce. Yeah.
Right.
It's going to
turn it over.
It's just turn it over. So yeah. Humanize. The word humanize.
I love that.
Everything we've been talking about just now. Doesn't matter who it is. No one should have a knee on their back for 9 minutes. It doesn't matter who they are. Period. That's the whole message here. You were talking about Maxine Waters. You were talking about the opinion. And what I heard was you don't have to agree with the opinions, but you are not allowed to attack.
That's right.
Opinions. You're not allowed to attack them. Everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't, it's not the same as yours doesn't mean that that you are allowed to demonize people or discredit them. You don't have to believe what they believe, but you have to accept the fact that that's the way it is. That's what they believe, and you believe in the same way. And the people who are very uncomfortable with what all this conversation is happening now, and they would just rather it like, why is this all in the news now? They just want it to go away because it just disrupts more and interrupts their lives and like, well, crybabies or whatever, whatever the rhetoric is behind what they feel. The opinion doesn't really change. It's just uncomfortable because I don't know how to explain it. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, no, that's so as you were speaking, what I was thinking is that somewhere right now, a black man is being pulled over by a white police officer or white police officers. And what is going through that young man's head? What's going through his mind? What's going through his heart? And I guarantee you it's not the same thing that would happen if it were me.
And it's not the same as me.
Right. So humanizing it, right, makes sense. But there was something that you had said around this, of course, not being over tomorrow. Right. The part that just really got under my skin was like, okay, he's convicted. Everything's okay now. No, it's not. It is not okay.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day as well, because I think, life is funny. I'm single. I don't have any kids. But there is I think deep down, maybe in my path, that in the future, maybe one day I will become a foster parent or adopt or something like that. I'm not opposed to it, right? And it came to my attention recently more and more. And I started to think, because I really, it doesn't matter who I foster or adopt, I mean, it's a soul, and they're obviously supposed to be with me for some reason. I don't know, that I'm just thinking ahead, but I thought, well, what if I fostered or adopted African American male? It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying to think about.
Wow.
And it made me mad, because I started to put this, like exactly what you just said, put a potential African American male that would be a child or a teenager in a car getting pulled over. How scary and heartbreaking is that? And it just, I really did put myself in that person's shoes. Granted, it's just, imaginary at the moment, but the problem is not imaginary. It exists. And to feel like I'm at home doing whatever, and my foster child or adopted son is out there getting mistreated and having fear, and I mean, hopefully not mistreated, but like just the fear of it, and what that entails. And then let's say that he gets detained or something. Whether or not he's guilty doesn't matter. And then I show up. How does that change everything?
Mm-hmm.
It would change a lot. I mean, admit it, right?
Yep.
A white mom shows up for her black kid. Oh, okay, ma'am.
Right.
Like, I imagine that would happen.
Yeah.
Do you agree with me, or am I just being out there in left field?
No, I do agree with you. And it reminded me of a funnier situation where the role
been there, yeah,
absolutely reverse. As the husband of an African American female, earlier in my life, and I had DUI, hit a semi, survive, was waiting for my wife to pick. I'm like, oh my gosh, she's gonna kill me. She's gonna kill me. She's gonna kill me. She's gonna kill me. And the guy's like, dude, calm down. This is the sheriff or the cop who was a black man. And she walked in. He's like, oh, you didn't tell me that she was a sister, and just started laughing. Right? Like, meaning that like she was going,
she really was gonna kill you.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I don't know. It was it's not necessarily relevant. It was just a funny little memory, but it does come back to the point where absolutely I could have deserved many knees on my neck if that were the case over my lifetime. So Humanizing. I'm still just buzzing with just energy, and I've intentionally not brought a mouthpiece to the energy of Mr. Chauvin. There's a lot there to be said and to be explored, but it's up here, right? And the point of this particular podcast is not to say love everybody, because yes, we should. But to your point, and to George's point, just humanize it, right?
Nice. It's the word.
Yep.
It's the word on the street, and it's the word in the spirit and the soul.
Amen.
All these people are humans. Amen.
Well, that was powerful. Thank you, Christina.
Well, I thank you, and I thank George.
Thank you, George. And to everyone that came with.
And he said, my pleasure.
Is there anything he wants to share? Anything else?
No, he just wants to, he's showing me a lot of gratitude right now. Just like, thank you so much. I appreciate this. I can sense the web that I was referring to earlier, but they're not really stepping forward. It was just to show, to show me what I needed to know. But no, he's still with me, and yeah, just gratitude.
Awesome. Well, gratitude towards him and his family as well.
And I thank you. I have gratitude for you. This was very interesting, and I feel even if no one were to listen to this would not exist out for anyone to find, I feel as if this has changed me. Just the conversation.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, always a pleasure, and we'll do it again next Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.